do your impromptu thing?
Yeah, that was the grossest story I've ever heard.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna make
weird.
you
Who does that, right? Where you put the pins in the tray?
I missed some of it.
You don't want to know. It's so gross. Are we ready?
You want a straw?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Am I on? Oh, I'm on. Okay, so I said I don't need a microphone, but then I was told that people on Zoom can't hear you unless you have a microphone. So when you ask questions, you have to have a microphone also, even if you don't like it, like I don't. Because I'm usually loud enough that I don't need it, especially in this room. But Christy said. So Catherine Nance, Chief of Police for Reno. I'll do quick intros. I brought with me, I won't make them introduce themselves because then I'd have to pass the mic, but usually make them introduce themselves and do a fun fact. So maybe if we get to the end of the meeting and you guys want the fun fact and we have time, they have a whole meeting to think about it. My assistant chiefs are here, Oliver Miller and Chris Jacobson. So they're here joining us today. And I'm just going to open it up on kind of where we're at and give you some, and Christy's over there running all the stuff. So we don't make anybody that runs stuff mad. So it's all be very nice. So I'll start off. I've been with the Reno Police Department for about a year, a little over a year. And one of the things that I've struggled with is what our patrol deployment looks like. And so by patrol, I mean our uniformed staffing members, the ones that go out and handle mostly calls for service and do a lot of proactive activity. So the ones that are deploying out every day on a continual basis, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and a variation of shifts and districts. Also, some ancillary people that handle calls for service. I don't think that we are operating under the best model possible. I might be surprised, and my lovely consultant might say, nope, you guys are doing everything perfect. Keep exactly as you're doing. And I'm going to say that's probably not true. So I'm excited to see what this study brings. It's a complete evaluation of calls for service, how long calls take, arrests that we make, different areas of town that we're in, drive times, just a lot of stuff that we wanted to put into the survey to say, how can we get better information back to better deploy our resources so that we can be more proactive and a better response time to calls for service. That being said, also one of the things that was important to me was how do we accommodate training schedules and days off and still have resources. In the officer wellness side of that is that they have to have a shift schedule that works so that they can be home with their families, decompress from their time at work, and work in a meaningful way when they're here, and then worry about their mental health when they've been involved in traumatic incidences or things like that that need to have that resiliency piece built in. So that coupled with their training, how do we get them to training so they can be better officers and perform better? There's state mandated training, and then also trainings that we want to see them just have to make them better officers and things that we expect from them. Some, the different things that we do. So I did not feel that I had either the bandwidth or the capacity to do this on my own. So that's where the consultant came in, because I think that outside perspective, and he'll tell you a lot about the business and who's going to do this, was really important. And part of that is a community input. So that's why we're here talking to community members to talk about patrol deployment. I'm going to warn you, if you get too far off the topic of patrol deployment and what that looks like and concerns that you have and some topics we're going to talk about, I'm going to have to stop you and say, hey, we can talk about that somewhere else. We can't derail meetings. But if there's something that you want to talk offline about, we can figure out a time to connect on that if it's something that's important to you, but maybe isn't relevant to this conversation, because I just want to make sure we stay on track. And then if we have any time at the end, we can also address anything like that. What else am I supposed to talk about? I do this all on the fly. I never have a plan, ever. Can't do it.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, we're doing what she said. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I'm Richard Brady. I'm the president of Matrix Consulting Group. I'll talk a little bit more about who we are as an introduction. I am leading a group of consultants who's working with the police department and the city on this study. Fun fact, in my spare time, I DJ and make sourdough bread. Okay. I don't do vinyl. Okay. Christy. I know, sorry, it's all on the computer. So first of all, a little bit about us. But before I do that, I thank you all for coming here. I know we lead busy lives, and coming here at dinner time is difficult, and fighting traffic and everything. So this is an important study for the city. We are laying the groundwork for making the case for the right number of patrol officers deployed in the city and in the right places. And so we've been working with the city for a couple of months now, and we got a couple of months to go. So this meeting is at a very good point to get this input on the study. So Christy, can you make it go a little bit further? So, first of all, a little bit about us. We've been around for a little over 20 years. Um, Although some of us, like me, have been doing this for twice that amount of time. We do a lot of things for local government. We do human resources studies. We did one for Reno right after we were formed. We do public works studies. We do fire studies. We did one of those for Reno too. Um, but our biggest service area is law enforcement. And we have worked just in 20 plus years, over 400 police departments around the country, a few in Canada even. But a couple and a new one in Nevada as well. We worked for LVMPD and for Elko in the past, and we just started a study for Henderson last week. So we feel we know the Nevada situation pretty well, although our philosophy is that every situation is different. Every city's different. Their service needs, their history, the topography, which gets into deployment, calls for service, the mix of different kinds of crime and different kinds of services. And so our big thing is data analytics, and that we get data and we show you how your resources are currently being used in the city, good and bad, and how we can make them better, and how we can make arguments about the right number of staff at the right time and in the right place. And we do that with some pretty sophisticated methodologies. Once you see the report in a couple of months, that we really prove to you that current deployment doesn't make sense for a lot of reasons, and that what we're going to be recommending will improve the issues that we have identified. We do that by having a hybridized group of consultants in our team. We have people such as myself. I've never been a police officer, but I've worked on all 400 of those studies. And I think I know what I'm doing when it comes to police analytics. And half of our team is that kind of people like me. But the other half are people who had a former life in law enforcement and are now people like me. And they're full-time consultants. They're not window dressing. They're people who are really good at data analytics. And they're people who have that little edge on understanding policies better than I do, and professional standards types of things and things like that. So that approach to staffing our studies really helps us get a very high implementation rate, generally over 80% of the recommendations that we make for our clients. So that's a little bit about us. Next slide, please. Oh, sure I can. Thank you. So a little bit about the study. So as the chief said, our scope of work is looking at patrol staffing and only put field service types of things, things related to patrol, um, and things like traffic and stuff like that. But also how they're deployed in time and space, looking at how they're scheduled and how they're deployed in beats throughout the city. That is our scope of work. We're not doing detectives in the study. We're not doing records. We're not doing other things in the police department. Um, we're getting there. We started a couple months ago. We're getting there by, we started out interviewing the chief, top command staff, and then worked our way through the department, mid-level managers, some first-line supervisors. We've got somebody here this week who is riding along for 3 days, I think, in every beat throughout the city on each shift, I think, to get a firsthand view of how officers are interacting with the public, first of all, to talk to them about their issues about staffing and deployment, but also so that we can get an appreciation of the things that go into making a good deployment system. Like not breaking up neighborhoods, like not breaking up major streets, not having one beat be on one side, another beat be on the other, taking into consideration railroad tracks and freeways and things like that. So there's some logical nexus between how you're deploying people and the work that they have to do. Um, so we are going to be building up from the ground up. We're not taking how they're deploying right now or even how they're staffed right now as a given. We're taking the workload that they're handling and the proactive things that they're doing and starting from scratch and rebuilding up the patrol operation as if it doesn't exist right now in a blank slate. Um, Community input. This is really important. Everything I've just described is us crunching numbers and talking to people in the department. Um, but effective police services relates to the people who are receiving the service as well. So we need your input And that's why we had these 4 meetings, 2 hybrid like this one, in person and virtual, and then 2 virtual only, to hear from the community about what they think are issues associated with current service delivery and things that they'd like the police department to focus on in terms of field services going into the future. So we'll want to hear a little bit about your views about what are the problems that you're facing. This is at City Hall. I don't know if everybody's lives downtown here. Probably a lot of you do, maybe not. I'm seeing a lot of head shaking. No. So we'll find out where you live later on. Um, so this helps us get the depth and quality to our analysis that you don't just get from looking at data in the computer-aided dispatch systems. So that's a valuable portion of this whole study. Next slide, please. So let me show you why the deployment thing is so important. This is a former and current client, San Jose. This is from the study we did for them about 7 or 8 years ago, a deployment study. And you can see 2 maps of the city. The one on the left was their deployment system when we arrived. Each one of those little irregular things is a patrol beat, really small in the densely populated downtown and central part of the city, and much bigger as you get further out. Don't need to describe what those different colors mean, except to say that on the blue range, they are 20 to 40% below the average number of calls for service for the whole city, and red 20 to 40% above. So the main point I want you to get an appreciation of is just how this represents different experience for the police officer, first of all. Some of them don't have any time to be engaged with the community or be deploying themselves in an area where there are problems. And other places have an excess amount of time. So what we did in our analysis is change the deployment system. So as you can see on the graph on the right, it's pretty equal. It's very equal. But things change. The city has grown by 100,000 and changed quite a bit since we did that work. And so they've got a problem there again. So we are working with them on a much bigger project now that's doing a whole department. Uh, it's involving the community as well there. So that's why this is important. Next slide. So community input, these, as I mentioned before, these meetings are really important to us. I'm only going to talk for a couple of more minutes because I really want this to be your meeting. I've got a couple of things on this slide that would be useful for me to hear because it directly relates to important things in this study. But any of your experiences or thoughts about field services are important to us too, as long as it's on that topic, as the chief said. So what we're interested in are your views on community presence, how visible they are in the community. Um, are they there in places where you tend to have problems in the community? Those types of issues. How responsive they have been to your needs when you request response because of a crime or some other kind of need that some police response is needed. Or even in a community meeting, how responsive they've been to your needs in that time. And then lastly, how proactive they are in working with you on problem solving and proactive in terms of the work that they're doing. And proactivity is probably the single most important element in policing today. If you measure what patrol officers do by how quickly they respond to calls, you're as important as that is, it doesn't get at the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is that their value is not just responding to things that happened 2 to 30 minutes ago, but how to be in places where things could happen in the future and to work with you in a proactive way, because the police department, every police department needs the help of the community in partnerships to solve problems, to help being their eyes and ears and to have a presence as your own. So let me talk a little bit more about what I mean by each of these. Next slide, please. So, oh, let's skip that one. Let's come back to that one. I got these out of sequence. So community presence, are they visible in your area? Do they ever get out of the car and talk to you? How have you engaged with them in other ways, in community meetings or something like that? And any suggestions you have for improvement. Next one. So your experience on requesting a police service. So there's a wide spectrum of things that the police department responds to. On the emergency side, in-person crimes, sometimes violent crimes, very serious crimes, certainly property crimes and other types of things. For those types of things, they should respond in most cities within 5 minutes, maybe 10 at the outside, depending on how serious it is. But not equally important, but also important are what um, their ability is to respond to non-emergency, lower priority calls for service. Something like a cold theft, something that maybe happened while you're away on vacation, uh, or barking dogs, or something like that that may not be rise to the level of seriousness. Um, it may fall down the level of urgency to the police department, but it's an important problem for you. So there needs to be an expectation that they can respond to um, some reasonable time, like 30 or 40 minutes. And so I'd be interested in what your experience was in that. And if they didn't respond in that period of time, how are you prepared for that by dispatch? Like they're very busy tonight, it might take them an hour or two. I'd be interested in those kinds of that kind of input. The Reno Police Department has recently implemented um, a civilian response to lower priority calls for service, some of the things that I mentioned in that second dot point there. These are trained paraprofessionals who are working during the daytime and early evening hours to respond to some of the kinds of things that I responded to. You don't necessarily need a police officer to respond to those, but a report needs to be taken. You were a victim of a crime, and that's a way of doing that. There's also internet reporting and things like that as well. So would want to know your openness to expanding that kind of thought, as well as for mental health and other kinds of specialized response. Next slide. So proactivity, again, this is the heart of the matter. So how responsive have they been in addressing problems that you've identified to them? I don't know if you've been to meetings like this that the police department may have had on a citywide basis or in your neighborhood or your community. If you have, has it been mostly them talking to you or them listening to you or some interchange? Um, I want to know something about what are your high priority issues and what the police department has done to prioritize those issues. So those are some of the kinds of things I'd like to hear about. But again, the rest of the evening is yours. So Christy, if we can go back a couple slides to the problem one. One more. There we go. So we don't have just people here from downtown. Um, we have people from all over the city. So I would like to start out by going around and asking people, what are the kinds of problems that policing can have an impact on that most concern you? Yes, and if you could say what part of the city you live in? Yep.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, I'm Taylor Adams. I'm the Chief Executive of the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada. We lead economic development for the region. And I have another event I have to run to. So if I can make a general just comment on why I'm here, and then I'll slip out. First, I want to say I think Reno Police Department does a fantastic job. As someone with 20 years of experience directly in local government leadership, specifically as a city manager or deputy city manager at the city of Virginia Beach, as well as at the city of Starkville, Mississippi, I can tell you what I see here is a vibrant, well-trained, and a police department that this community should be incredibly proud of. Chief, I'll say to you as I see your cars around town, more than just the cars, I see that your officers are well engaged, eyes on what's going on around them, but also um, persistently friendly. Just as someone who's been in the business for a long time, I try to always acknowledge police officers wave, and I find that the men and women that you have on the street are engaged in their work day to day and do a fantastic job protecting and serving this community. Um, I live in Somerset, so I will tell you there many of the issues we're going to talk about here are not something that I feel in my community. However, I will tell you that in talking to neighbors of mine, I think that everyone there feels like we get, or everyone that I have talked to there feels like we get fantastic service from our police department. The reason I'm here tonight is there's no community in America that functions without a vibrant urban core. And so I'm really here tonight to speak on behalf of our downtown area and the importance of sort of a persistent focus here. I'm, I will tell you, I have, so having been to many downtowns around America, I'm quite proud of what we have right here. But make no mistake, the challenges that we have here are real. And so any focus that we can bring to what's happening in the urban core helps me do my job and helps me be more effective for the community. And so I'm grateful to all of the work that I see happening here today, but would ask that we continue that focus. You know, I'm trying to think of as it relates to other things that you mentioned there. Again, I am very well satisfied with what I see from the Reno Police Department. The one thing I would advocate for is resource beyond, and so this gets into patrolling. Resources are finite, and just going back to my days as a city manager, I would openly advocate for resources beyond CAD on the technology side for the men and women that are on our that are part of the Reno Police Department, and I think about investigative tools like things like Chorus Intelligence and other things as well, Shot Spotter, Brass Tacks, all of the outstanding technology resources that we have that take pressure off of other parts of policing that allow more to be done on the ground. I mean, anything that we can do to create a safer environment for the men and women that are on patrol in our community is something that we should look at, and that should go well beyond CAD in the present. With that, I'll stop talking.
Can I ask a follow-up question though? In your role with economic development, so you're not just working with the police department on calls for service, but also, oh, sorry, yeah. Oh, we got two microphones, great.
Yeah.
I know, right.
Yeah.
Is that, how has the police department worked with the specific needs of the downtown core, as you said?
So that's a great, and I'll answer this beyond the confines of downtown. There's no company looking at locating in northern Nevada that isn't going to ask me questions about public safety. I mean, it's a critical part of our work. So you can rest assured, I will get a question about public safety. I'll get a question about quality of life. We'll get a question about how the public schools are performing, how the university's doing, and just how the city is performing. And so there is, but the first question is always going to be about public safety in the community. And so in that space, that's where I'll say I'm so grateful to the chief and the work that her team is doing to ensure that we've got good answers to those questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry to run out, but
Yeah, no worries.
I've got to go speak at another event.
Thank you very much. Okay, back to the policing issue slide. Anybody else have something to say about the major issues? Well, you're doing so much tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, first of all. I still have my driver's license. It's a miracle. But I live in Reno. I drive around Reno a lot, and I see an infestation of unlicensed vehicles. And you could say they're not hurting me, but I think they are. They're probably not paying for insurance. If they commit a crime, such as something small like a traffic accident or something big like run over somebody, they have luxury of running because we don't know who it was. It was a white Toyota. And that doesn't help the police department much. What I'm going to propose is that it may have already been done, and I'm just wasting everybody's time, but I have a suggestion that the police department have the motor officers, the motorcycle guys, stop the next 100 of these they see and keep a count of how many stolen cars they found, how many uninsured they found, probably all of them, how many people with warrants they found, and whatever else interesting they find, and report that back to the management of the police department. And you might find it terribly uninteresting, or you might find it to be very interesting. But this is a minor breakdown of the rules of law. I don't know when I see a car with no plates, I don't know what's going on there, except maybe my insurance is a little higher, or maybe it's a lot higher, and remind me not to get in an accident with them because they're going to run.
Run insured anyway.
Thank you.
You're talking about not just expired registration. You're saying no plates at all.
I think it's more just no plate. You can Okay,
I know, sorry.
am I done?
Yeah, you can be. Yes, anybody else?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jessica Glover, and I'm running for Reno City Council for Ward 1. On November 21st, November 1st of 2021 will be a night that I'll never forget. I went out for Halloween festivities, and when I went to leave, there were about 8 to 10 gang members waiting for me outside of a nightclub right here off Virginia and 2nd Street. At the time, I did not have a working phone, so 911 was only option. After I assessed my safety before walking outside, I said it's really not a situation. So 911 was my only option. The officer who arrived first did arrive on time, and I addressed to him my concern and my safety of why I had called 911. And I had asked first if there is a way that, he could take me if he could drive me, to the taxi stand at the El Dorado. He said he could not. He said that he would have me walk, which is, I don't know, 2 to 3 blocks from the arch. And he would watch me walk. As he was explaining that to me, a second officer arrived, and he let her know what was going on in the situation. As a victim of human trafficking, those minutes walking to the El Dorado, not knowing what was going to happen to me, was the scariest time of my life. I would just ask for the officers to be more sympathetic when they're dealing with a victim. I live here in Ward 1. I walked here today because it's a nice day outside. I did see about 2 to 3 officers in the directions that I was walking. But I would not live my life in fear, and that's because I've had to fight all of my life. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming here and telling us that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, anyone else? Yes, in the back.
Hi, my name's Alexandra Cleary. I've been a resident here for 20 years, and I can say my dealings with the Reno Police Department has been wonderful. I'm in real estate, so I'm doing things all throughout the city at all different times, and you never know when you're going to be in danger. I've gone into vacant properties, and I have had to call because when we had squatters and properties and things like that, and they've always responded very nice, and I've never had a problem, and I really appreciate all they do because I don't think they get enough credit. So I'm giving you guys some credit and some cheers because you guys do a lot of hard work for this city. I want to cry because I've seen the good work you guys have done here in the 20 years downtown has gotten cleaned up. I was afraid to go downtown 10 years ago. I'm not now. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Yes. Hold on.
Thank you, Chief. I'm sorry about my voice here today. There's allergies out here driving me crazy. I must have a much higher voice usually. Now it's just gravelly. My name is Pat Shea. I'm the coordinator of Neighborhood Watch in Cabernet in Golden Valley. And I speak with our neighbors every week, every month. And the number one complaint, as in all other communities, is speeding in the neighborhoods. The speeding, I can't do a whole lot about, but I have the police. I've worked with Lieutenant Ryan and Officer Way, and we've had 3 traffic studies We had the radar card out. They were very helpful with us, very forthcoming with that. As far as the neighborhood watch goes, our biggest problem is we've been orphaned and that we don't have an officer now assigned to us. And not sure the Reno PD is actually running a neighborhood watch program anymore. On the speeding side, we have, the traffic division of the city engineer's office have recommended we install speed feedback signs. And the biggest question that I understand they work pretty good because they make people look at them and they hit their brake just a little bit. And that's all we really want to get is people to slow down just a little bit. We have only two major streets in our neighborhood that need this kind of control. And we are kind of a bypass for the 395 corridor up there. After the corridor fills up, they start spilling off onto the feeder streets, and the feeder streets fill up, they start going down our neighborhoods. And they go down our neighborhoods 25 miles an hour like everybody else, and we're seeing, some pretty high speeds. I don't have a clock on them, and I'd like to have my sign out there. Oh, okay, speed gun, yes. We had a fellow stand out there with a hair dryer and a clipboard, right? Slowed everybody down. But what we'd really like to know is if I put these speedback signs in, they have a recording capability. It can be uploaded to the cloud and available to enforcement for how the deployment works. And I was wondering if Reno PD is going to be connected to this cloud with the all traffic sign system, and that would provide additional input into how the officer deployment works. So that's the question I have there. Thank you.
I can't answer that, but I will have a follow-up question. Yeah.
So you mentioned like using cameras for enforcement, and I know that wasn't exactly part of the question. That's not allowed in the state of Nevada, so it is something that we get brought up, like it has to be, we have to actually observe that, so that's not really allowed. As far as the incorporation of the studies that we get, if we deploy the traffic trailers out there, we would get that information back. If they're deployed by you, we probably won't get it back to incorporate into the studies. So what we do use though as an option is Reno Direct. And so anybody that reports a crime into Reno Direct, that's one of the things that we're also looking at when we deploy traffic models and we deploy our traffic personnel. So we kind of rely on the citizens and the people in the communities to say, hey, this is where an area where there's a problem. And then when we get that, we have about a 48 hours, unless it's not feasible, given, like if you call in on Friday and say there's a problem at a school, and maybe the school's on holiday on Monday, we're not going to go out there until, a day when the school's in session to do the enforcement or to evaluate it. But as soon as we get that complaint from that community, we deploy a traffic model out there to say how to evaluate it, decide if we need to do a speed study, work with engineering, or deploy additional resources. So that's how we usually do it. So we get the information, not as direct as that.
So the actual deployment would be done by the city street division? We would not install the signs ourselves. We would just pay for them. And the city would install them.
Yeah.
Would that be
that's the way it works,
would that be
yeah.
a considered deployment by the RPD?
It would depend on how it's done and how we get the information back and what they're looking for. So I don't know what they're capturing exactly. We would have access to it, but how we would have access would be the question. What it actually showed.
I would like to take that offline to understand, get to with somebody in the, to figure out how that would be done properly.
So here's my follow-up question. What you described is a great example of your neighborhood watch, Golden Valley, identifying a problem, people speeding through neighborhoods. The department helped orchestrate a multidisciplinary response in terms of enforcement, the speed, the feedback signs and the speed studies and things like that. First of all, did it impact traffic behaviors? And has it still impacted traffic behaviors?
I believe we had a typical response. The traffic behavior was immediately affected.
Yeah.
When people saw the sign, they slowed down. Our
Yeah.
speeds went down from in the 50s to in the 40s.
Wow.
That's
What-
still well above the 25 mile an hour, but
Yeah.
they continue to drop. We had the radar card out in December to January in the wintertime, then we
Yeah.
had it in the spring. There was a significant retention of the awareness
Uh-huh.
through the 2023 year, and now that's degrading. That has degraded again. People are just flying down the street.
Okay.
I get every time I open the subject up at the neighborhood watch or the HOA meeting, speed is what they are concerned about.
Does the police department send a representative to your neighborhood watch meetings, and have you continued to express this concern?
We did up until the time Chief Soto retired.
Okay.
Then if there was reorganization. I don't know. One of the things I'm trying to find out
Okay.
tonight is if neighborhood watch is still being funded.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes.
Hi, T Tran, nice to see you again, Chief. I actually helped teach that multifamily crime-free housing class for you guys. Yeah. So I'm a developer, property manager. I own and manage several buildings downtown, right by the river. And one of the things I noticed was pre-COVID, we had this great unit, the CAOs. I know they're still there. I know there was some restructuring, especially when COVID happened. And we had that spike in homelessness and that issue. I, and I helped teach this class with some of the CAOs. So I'm trying to figure out, I think kind of part of the neighborhood watch thing, there's been some restructuring and some of us are trying to figure out, well, who is our rep? I've talked to a couple of the officers and there've been, leave and injuries, and I totally get that. What I want to say is that unit specifically is amazing. It's a huge benefit to the community. I actually was trying to get it to go in Sparks. So it's and again, it's why I'm such a huge proponent. I help teach this multifamily crime-free housing class because in housing, especially multifamily apartment complexes, we see so many different issues, everything from grand theft auto to assault to, I mean, you name it, we've seen it. So it's such a great unit. And I know that guys rotate in and out of that. But I want to give kudos to that unit specifically because they're phenomenal. I just know that we used to have a kind of a more personal touch on that. We used to see our CAOs. A lot of the managers now that I try to tell, hey, they're saying, I have problems, I need help, I don't know who to call. I'm like, who's your CAO? They've never even heard of the CAO. So I would love to help re-engage the management community, the real estate community in that part of it, especially because I'm on both the developer side and the management side. I've been trying to figure that out with Officer Reed and things, but again, I get it. Everyone's so busy. So I just want to give kudos to that department. That, to me, that engagement with the population is huge because they were in our apartment complexes and different, all over the city. I mean, I've dealt with them from South Reno to downtown corridor. So I would just love to see that engagement again. It was really good pre-COVID and then COVID. So that'd be my comment.
Too. Sorry. So you described the crime-free multi-housing connection you have with the department on ongoing problems for existing rental properties and condos and things like that.
Okay.
So how is the city and the department working with you on the development side for new construction or for repurposing existing buildings so that you're designing in crime-free kinds of elements into it?
So I don't think that they are. I find that I'm the one often telling my fellow developers or fellow managers, hey, you should really have an officer come walk with you. Because I've had several when I've taken over a property, when we're building a property, they're doing the whole like walking around and they're like, hey, those hedges, not a good idea. We can't see, we can't. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, what do you guys think about the lighting? Like, I know to ask for that because I happen to come across a great CAO early in my career. So I think I was just really fortunate. I lucked out with a really great officer. I find that I'm trying to be the one spreading the word to the other developers. I'd love to try and just get more of that out, which is why code enforcement asked me to teach this class. So I teach a very specific part of that class, like code enforcement will do their thing. I talk about evictions. It's not great. And kind of the law part of it. So, it's really a word of mouth thing. I think I just happened to luck out in my career, with a great CAO 5, 6 years ago. So, sorry.
Yeah, no, no, thank you. And every city in the country is still dealing with the pre and post COVID adjustments. I mean, we're still evolving from that. Yes, anybody? Yes.
Hi, my name's Morton Harmony. I live in downtown Reno at the Palladio. And we had a number of residents that submitted public comments to the Planning Commission and to City Council on an appeal issue. And I've got those here with me because I think they address, I think 3 of them may have been to one of these meetings, but that's it. The rest of them are original thoughts. So there, I don't know if you're allowed to accept this written material. So I don't want to bore you with it. My comments to City Council and the Planning Commission are in there as well, and I don't want to repeat. Go ahead and keep moving. I don't want to have to repeat all that to you. But the issue we've had in downtown Reno is really priority level 3, which is disturbing the peace type related issues, which enter into can the ambassadors or security ambassadors, if they are trained and have the backup and the communication with the Reno PD, can they be utilized effectively? I think that's possible. That's a very good possibility. Just like sometimes some cities use certain personnel to write citations, parking tickets, et cetera, et cetera. It could be, and I'm not qualified. That's for you guys to decide whether or not that can work or not work. But I think it's something that certainly could be looked into, because the experience we've had in downtown Reno, living at the Palladio, we're technically not in the 24-hour entertainment district at downtown Reno. We're in the Riverwalk district, but we're treated in the last 10 years, we're being treated anything north of the river as if it were. For example, we now have 2 live entertainment events that were permitted by the city to operate past 11 o'clock till 3 a.m. in the morning with live entertainment, and they're marketed heavily for that. The Sticks Bar was one. It was Thursday night, college night, and it was worse than any Friday night. So now we have 2 of these live entertainment events going on within 100 feet of our residential condominium unit. And there's 2 other ones within a block or a block and a half away. So it's not even entertaining the district. So it's creating a problem really between the compatibility noise wise between residents who have a reasonable expectation to sleep at night and businesses that want to operate and be financially successful. And so we've had ongoing issues with one place in particular. Over the last 8 years, it was a living nightmare. And because it's level 3, I understand that. First couple of times I called 911, it was responded to. Probably about the 3rd time within about over a 2-year period or something like that, I finally get scolded and said, "Don't call 911," which I'm old. And when 911 was invented, it was when you need the police, call 911. Well, things have changed. And I understand the need not to call 911 if it's not an emergency, but it's hard to know sometimes when something's going to escalate into that. When do you call 911? For a verbal altercation that quickly turns into physical altercation that turns into a shooting, which as you were, I witnessed at the Sticks that night when I was woken up at night again. So when we would typically call, you're quickly told, and you're educated, call the non-emergency. When you call the non-emergency number, it typically has been anywhere from 20 minutes, I wouldn't even say 20, 45 minutes to an hour before you get a call back. And then when you do talk to the officer, he's very professional. And he says, well, if I have a car available, I'll try to get one to drive by within 20 minutes. And typically that's about what it would take. Sometimes you don't get a call. We didn't get a call back at all. So what happens is there's no enforcement when somebody continually disturbs the peace. So, and I understand there's a conflict there, freedom of speech and disturbing the peace. When does it cross over? And I understand that, well, the person has to be warned before they can actually be cited for disturbing the peace, if I'm correct. I could be wrong, but that's what I understand. So kind of a question is, I know the city used to have some noise codes that they got away with, but maybe it's time to bring some of those back as more residents are coming into downtown Reno, so that, or there needs to be possible signage out there, so that the person just doesn't get warned to quit speaking or quit causing a disturbance. That there can actually be some enforcement for doing that. Otherwise, we keep living this nightmare over and over and over again. Because usually by the time the police officers do show up, it's long gone. So there's nothing there. And if they do drive by, when does the business establishment become responsible for instigating or promoting events that continually disrupt the peace of residents needing to live across the street? So those are the issues we've suffered. I totally understand. I think the Reno Police Department is very, very professional. I've watched them handle difficult situations in downtown Reno, and they do it very, very professionally, and they don't take it personal. If somebody gets out of line, they still don't take it personal. It's just like, okay, now you're going to go for a ride. So they handle it very, very well. And interfacing with officers on the phone has been very well. But I think it's probably a matter of resource allocation. I know the ambassadors, I pay now $1,000 extra a year in taxes for the ambassador program. And with that program, we were supposed to have more policing, but I understand they took $800,000 out of the police budget to allocate to the ambassadors, if that's correct. So I don't understand how you get more policing when you take money away from you guys. So it's kind of a magic, but I don't think it's been working very effectively on low level priorities. So it's just been a nightmare for some of us living downtown Reno. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I can too, but, okay. So, so you've raised some really important questions here. Several of them are very germane to this study. I mean, we're not going through all the city's ordinances. I doubt if they changed, it's probably the enforcement of them that's changed. I don't know about signage and things like that, but you brought up the problem of how lower priority calls for service get handled in a community. And every community is facing that. Certainly every community's got a staffing and a deployment problem, which is most of them these days. For emergency calls, almost every department in the country has sufficient staff to drop whatever they're doing to get there quickly. And that's typically not the problem. But trust in enforcement in the community, trust of your police department between the community and the police department is more than that. It's because the vast majority of what the police department patrol is handling are those kinds of things. So if they can't respond to something in, you said 45 to 60 minutes plus 20 minutes for an actual response, maybe, so we're talking about an hour and 15 minutes or more. I mean, we can check all that out in CAD, and I'm sure there are many calls that are like that. Then there's some problem there in that they're so overloaded or in the wrong places or overloaded with higher priority calls that they can't go to the lower priority calls, whether it's through 911 or direct or whatever kind of mechanism there is to report. So that is really important for our study. And so I appreciate you giving us this. I'll get it to my team and we will read them. But I quickly went through it, and a lot of it was talking about the kind of thing that you just talked about. So thank you.
So I don't disagree with the idea that there are some interesting noise laws and ordinances, especially in the downtown area, and what's allowed and not allowed through the entertainment district. So your specific businesses and things we talk about create an interesting kind of conundrum, both for law enforcement, business licensing, and code, which all comes together to solve these issues. So just understand that there are some convoluted laws. Is there a possibility that we improve these ordinances? Yeah, I think that they could, because I don't know that the ordinances for downtown match what the living conditions are right now. And so that kind of ties hands in a lot of different ways. So I feel your plight of a lot of these things. And I know we've talked to council at different times. If I can just address one other side of that, when to call and who to call. And I'll say it, how what I would say is that if you think something's in progress and you need a response immediately, that's like a 911 call, like I'm an emergency, I'm in danger, I need help. If it's a low priority call, you want somebody to come out, but you don't feel like you're personally in danger or nothing else is in danger. And again, these situations are volatile and they change in an instant almost sometimes. But we can't forecast what the next steps are. Those are, call the regular business line and then hopefully we can get somebody out there, in a timely manner. It really depends on what's happening. The two things I will say that happen a lot for everybody in the room is that people don't provide their name or contact information for us to call back. It's typically an issue. And some of these crimes that you're talking about, they do require somebody else to be the victim of them. We can't drive by and just arrest somebody for something that somebody else has to be a victim for. If we can't get in touch with the person that was witness to it, we really can't do much enforcement, which is a really terrible way to look at it. But it's that kind of things that we can only do so much enforcement if we don't physically see them that happening. And then just to address some of your concerns on businesses, because I get this a lot of questions about this. Every time you call, it becomes a call for service, which becomes a record of us to be able to say this is a problem in this area, which helps us look at how we deploy, which looks at how we resource things, and also might not be an instant solution from us. So you might not actually see us go to that bar that night, but it's something that we might log and say, we're going to come back later because we've got an excessive amount of complaints. And there's a couple bars downtown that have reached that level where they are over the number of calls for service that are considered typical for a bar or typical in the area. And then because of their excessive number of calls of service, it makes us work with code enforcement, business licensing, and those other entities to determine, do they continue to keep their license the way it is? Or do they get some sort of fine or punishment to say they can't operate that way? Where it gets even worse, though, is that some of those conditions of their permits go back to the electeds, either in the planning commission or on the council, and they have to make that hard decision on what to do. So that's where your advocacy for your downtown and what you want to see in it becomes very important, because they hear you and they hear what you're saying. But if nobody's advocating, sometimes that's the step that can create some problems. So I know it's not a great answer for everything, but I'm more educational and just trying to say that don't not call because you don't feel that you're going to get a response, because every one of those calls goes into us evaluating that location to say, hey, are they a problem in the area and how do we address and fix them? And it might not be a police problem necessarily. It could be fire, code, business licensing, health department. All of those things come into play to say, how are we making that bar a better place or a business establishment if they're not a good business?
But the chief is right. Unless you call, it's not data that they can do anything with. It's anecdotal information that just gets lost. So it has to be reported. I think this is, as I said before, so central to what we're doing in this study. I think of calls for service. There are a variety of urgencies and risks associated with it to the community. And each of those takes a different set of skills and abilities on the part of who's handling that on your part from the police department. And it's kind of this continuum. On one end, you've got things that don't require response of anybody and don't require a particular skill. You're just getting a report maybe for insurance purposes. And in most departments, this department included, you can do things over the phone or on the internet, no response at all. Then you've got something in the middle where it doesn't take a police officer, but a paraprofessional who's doing kind of the same thing, but doing the personal kind of approach to making you feel better about what's happened and taking your report and giving you advice, up to a police officer response. So that's part of what we're looking at. And so that if response to problems was at the one end, stuff going into a pipe in a lot of departments, not this one so much, it's like continues through the pipe at the other end. What we need to do is look at a variety of strategies that include maximizing online types of reporting, maximizing non-sworn response, and response with specialized skills like for mental health and homelessness kinds of calls and issues, up to the important things that need police officers to respond to and respond to quickly, so that they're not spending a lot of their times on things that you don't need their cost and their skill level to do. So again, thank you.
Richard, we have a question online if
Okay.
you want to switch. Bill, if you want to unmute and start speaking.
Hello, can you hear me?
Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. First of all, I want to say I really appreciate, or try to appreciate, because I don't really know, how difficult it is to be a police officer. It certainly is a very difficult job, and I'm thankful for all of the wonderful men and women who do the job. A couple things that I'd like to bring up about these meetings. I watched a little bit of the last one and watching this one, and although I truly appreciate the idea that the Reno Police Department is reaching out to the public and asking for feedback, and it seems like there's going to be some sort of collection of data. I want you to really consider who's giving you the data and look at who's attending and where are these meetings being held. I think that perhaps that you might get some more insightful information if these meetings would be held in areas of town where there was higher calls of service. Um, it, I love McKinley, City Hall, both good places, but you just don't get a lot of calls of service around there. Maybe a little bit around City Hall, but it's not the areas where, let me say it differently. Those are areas where you're going to get people saying one particular point of view generally. You already did answer one question that I had. I appreciate the comments on it and how important is it to report the petty crimes as like porch pirates and that kind of stuff. So I really appreciate that. Um, I am on one of the neighborhood advisory boards with the city, and probably one of my favorite things with that is police officers do come, every couple months and give us a report about what's going on, and I really appreciate that interaction. So please continue to support that activity. I think it's very beneficial and I think it's very helpful. But I have to say one thing that made me pretty sad is one of the officers said summer's really, really tough on them because it is tons and tons and tons of overtime to the point where it's summertime, his kids are out of school, and he can't take his kids on vacation or go camping because he's so busy with overtime. And I think when you start looking at staffing and retention and things of that nature, that from a managerial point of view, I hope you take that kind of thing into consideration so that, when these men and women who work their butts off, they have a hard job. Um, if they want to go camping in the summer or the kids are out of school, the family's out of school, they can take a trip somewhere. They can go do something and not be locked into, he didn't call it mandatory overtime, but kind of an expected thing. So I think that might help with some retention, at least from that one person's feedback that we got. But thanks for having these meetings. But I think we can probably get some better data if you expand the outreach to some different areas of town. That's probably the big point there.
Thank you. And I did appreciate your point about summer and overtime. And the time that officers have to be available for patrol is an important part of this study. And often that gets neglected just because many departments, this one included, are down positions. So that especially at peak times, summer, particularly in the Reno area, is going to be an issue. So we need to make sure in our analysis that we've incorporated appropriate amounts of availability for them to be able to take vacation, to be sick, and have other things that result in time off so that there isn't excessive overtime. There will be overtime in a police department and at peak times, but not um, mandated or quasi-mandated overtime as you described. Many departments we work with, the officers are calling in sick to get vacation time because they can't get the vacation time. And so that's really undesirable. So that's central to our analysis just as much as the workload is. Thanks.
Very good. Absolutely. Thanks for doing it. And yeah, quality of life is important on both sides of the badge. So
Yeah. And that's why
Absolutely.
the schedule is important too.
Yeah.
The ability to have a schedule that is desirable, people want to work, they get a fair chance of having a weekend either equally or earlier in their career or some sort of expectation about it is really important. And that's why it's in the study.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Yes.
Hi, my name is Billy Shea. I live up in Golden Valley, And what we've experienced over the last 15 or 20 years is a problem that Reno is probably not unique to, but with the massive growth and new neighborhoods being built in the North Valleys and other valleys, Spanish Springs as well, Reno City has brought into their fold neighborhoods that are basically islands, that the county surrounds them. And there's several of them in North Valleys that I know if RPD is supporting those, which I believe they are, and please don't get me wrong, I can't tell you how much I appreciate RPD. I think you're doing a great job. But it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to drive from downtown Reno to North Valleys to patrol those areas where the problems are probably not anywhere near as significant as what's going on downtown. But we do have problems there too as well. And what Pat and I've been doing for the last couple of years is trying to promote Neighborhood Watch. I know that's a little off topic, but it kind of dovetails with what we would like to do is offer any assistant, administrative or otherwise, that we can do to support promoting Neighborhood Watch in our entire community, not just those areas that are outside the, the city limit, the proverbial downtown area. I know the county has something like 85 Neighborhood Watch programs going. Teresa Aquila does a wonderful job for the county. The city, as far as I know, we've been told there are only 2, and that's just not enough. I really think that if we take this offline, as the chief said, maybe we can find a way to support Neighborhood Watch while not taking away too much from the budget that is already strained to a painful situation.
Thank you. And while we're not doing a staffing study of all the functions within the department, including neighborhood officers who would support neighborhood watch types of groups, the existence of neighborhood watch is very important for this study because it is one of the principal mouthpieces from the community directly to the police department and especially patrol in terms of identifying problems that officers' proactive time can be dedicated to. So thanks. Anybody else? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me again. So the survey that I suggested, you may well find that 98 out of 100 are people that just don't have the money to cover everything that society expects of them. They could be making decisions between food and registering their car. But I don't think we know that. And I think it'd be very helpful to know. And it could be something entirely different. And I appreciate what the police department does. You can't cover all the bases. It's obvious. And I don't think there are very many cities in the country where they can cover all the bases. It's just, that's the new reality. I appreciate what the department does.
Interesting, the whole concept of people driving around without license plates, because one of the technologies the police department has are automated license plate readers that can connect you to, somebody who's got a warrant out on them, but there's no plate on the car. That's going to be kind of hard. Can't read the VIN number. Yes.
As I was working for, as a shuttle driver for the Union Pacific Railroaders, I also understand this man's concerns, as I would be traveling on the freeway, and every day I would see unregistered vehicles, not only unregistered, but also driving through the 395 corridor where they're doing the construction zone by Park Boulevard to Golden Valley. And the speed limit is 55. However, they believe that they can still do 65. And or I've even seen, 75, 80 because being on the road, you can kind of time, the speed that the person is doing. And I just as recent, I've seen that there is a report of a accident in that area. So I'm pretty sure it's because of speed. So yeah, I'm for this guy.
Thank you. It is fun to guess the speed. Anybody else online? Christine? Okay. Any other comments or questions or points here? Okay. Yeah, don't worry, it's open mic.
I'd be interested in working on the neighborhood watch. Just because like I said, I see a lot of things, and as being a victim of human trafficking, like I see a lot of things that people are not aware of, that I can bring attention to.
Thank you. Good offers. Appreciate that. Well, if that's it, thank you very much once again. This was a great evening. It was very valuable to me and to my group and the chief and her group.
You didn't ask, and I don't know if it came up in any of the space about the, sorry, I know everybody probably wants to leave, and I just asked, I'm like that kid in class that raised my hand when the teacher dismissed us, I'm sorry. You can all hit me later. It's, about the, professional staff
Mhm.
for non-sworn handling calls. If there's
Yeah, we only just talked a little bit about that.
Just like to the group, if there's any concerns or online reporting.
Yeah.
Just to get a feel for how this group sees on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a good point. No, to make sure we've got absolutely covered that.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's something that, as Neighborhood Watch, we were trying to push this a lot. Teresa talked to me about this from the sheriff's office as a first level of reporting of a myriad of things that are not part of 911 that you wouldn't report. And there is a great resistance to understanding the nature of what the Reno Direct does and how they build a database of the information and help you figure out where the incidents are. We have been pushing this for 2 years and people still call me and say, what do we do? I say, here's a business card, call IBM Direct or call Reno Direct. I'm sorry, I was on a team and called IBM Direct for years. So it did the same thing for the corporation. I'm a believer in it. That's how I got our radar carts out to the field. We went all the way through the process because that was a zero response. It took 7 or 10 days for somebody to respond, but we got Lieutenant Conley finally to call us. And we got that whole project off the ground. We have gotten a number of things go through Reno Direct and have them work. I think there's just not, while you put the cards out, and I even see TV ads, people just do not trust the fact that they're talking to a non-badged individual. And this goes to the professional also.
I need my own microphone. Does it make any difference if it's a sworn member of the department, like, dressed like me? Not that I'm super effective on the streets any longer. I'm old and in an office and all that stuff. Or does it matter if it's like a community service officer, somebody, they maybe don't carry a gun, but they're still working with the department, or a front desk staff? I mean, is it that it's not a person as opposed to a machine, or is it just resistant because it's not the policey looking police?
It's important. The badge presence is important. My fellow member on my neighborhood watch, his wife is a manager of the senior division patrol, and they come around all the time and report on cars that are been abandoned in the neighborhood. They get a lot more respect than the person on the other end of the line of Reno Direct. So there's the dispatchers up on Parr Boulevard get more respect than the person on the phone.
So it's
at
the
Reno
person,
Drive.
it's actually having the human contact, not necessarily what their capacity is in the department, rather than just putting something on a computer system.
I think it's the presence, there's a lot more knowledge about, in the field about what dispatchers do as opposed to what Reno Direct does. Reno Direct is a dispatch system as well as it dispatches. I've had a lot of luck with it. I call them, I tell them what my problem is. They say, no, you don't really want to talk to that division. You want to talk to this division. I think it's working very well, but doesn't have the same reputation for enforcement of anything. I mean, I can go straight to enforcement with code enforcement from Reno Direct. But I can't do that by calling 911. It's impossible.
Yeah.
People will still call 911 because they've been put in their brain either drop and roll or call 911. Whatever you want to do, but don't call Reno Direct.
Yeah.
That's what's in their head. Okay.
So let me make sure I understand one thing though. So I get the point about Reno Direct and other robo approaches to responding to a problem. And I heard about the need for police officers where there's an enforcement need or emphasis.
Right.
But what about the uniform, but different uniform, paraprofessional human being who responds to your house or business or whatever to handle a lower priority problem for you?
Well, I'm all for it.
Okay, great.
I believe in it. I believe senior patrol
Okay,
is getting that kind of job done.
great.
If there is and the ambassadors, I don't ever hear about the ambassadors. Like once in a while, the news doesn't talk about them. Nothing. They don't get any press at all. I think RGJ would run an article. They might sell a newspaper or two. You know, they're not, they're kind of underdog would be the wrong word. They're just, maybe a redheaded stepchild is more appropriate. Maybe if you're going to go with that professional level, that whole thing has to not just be advertised. They need to make a television show out of it.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And to make it clear, the police department has that capability right now. They have 2 community service officers in each of the 3 divisions on stays and swings, right?
I think it's 4 right now. We have 2 in training. I think we're getting up to 6.
Okay, so half of what I said. But you have vacant position, but you have that capability right now. And very important for our study is to look at opportunity. I'm sounding like you now, is looking for opportunities to increase that kind of response in the city.
Yeah, I think as long as they're uniformed
Yeah.
and it's a visibility issue, I think that would work very
Okay.
well.
Great. Thank you.
Just to clarify because I wasn't on the mic, so the Zoom couldn't hear me. We believe, and I'd have to check the numbers for sure. I'm doing this from memory and I'm not great on quizzes sometimes, that we have 6 community service officers that are in the patrol division handling different calls. And I think 2 of them are still in training, 2 or 3 are still in training. So they might not be full-time positions that we've acquired. They just are brand new into the job.
I'd like to address a little bit about that. I've tried calling Reno Direct several times, probably at least 3 different times over the years. And I generally hear nothing back from them. So the impression, probably not intentional, is that they took it and round filed it. And it's reassuring to hear that that's not the case, but it would be nice, just like you make a medical appointment nowadays, you get an automatic response back. We've received your input. Thank you very much. It's being routed. You could say we're to the appropriate department or departments or whatever, just to know that it's not just being round filed, because the impression to me is they really don't want to hear from me.
Right.
And another thing is like the police media reports that on your website, for some reason, they're typically on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but there's generally not a media report on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or what happens on those weekends. And so the impression to me is that the truth is being stepped on, and that might not be true, but I don't understand why there's not. Maybe I'm going to the wrong place, and maybe there's another place to get accurate data on that. But to me, again, I think it may not be intentional, but it's leaving possibly a false impression that.
No, understood. That's actually one of the things that we've been working on changing, because that was sporadic at best of the media reports. And we had one person doing it, and they didn't come to work, we didn't get them done. So we've actually been changing that process. So hopefully you are seeing an increase, but I did actually, oddly enough, I made a note of it because I forgot about it until you just reminded me. Checked on Sunday, and the last one we'd had up was Wednesday, and I was pretty confident something happened between Wednesday and Sunday. But of course, I woke up at 3 a.m. and checked and forgot to write it down in my notes. So thank you for reminding me on that, because now we'll have a conversation about that again, because it does come in sporadic. But on the Reno Direct, just so for your own kind of knowledge base, I don't know when the last time you filed a report with them was, or if anybody else has. We changed our policy on it, and the way that it works for us is that you will get a response within a specific amount of time, depending on what it is, and we will reach back out to you. And one of the things that I've pushed, and we've been a lot more successful at it, even if we get a council complaint from a constituent that they send to us, we don't just respond back to the council member. We actually call that person directly also, because I want to hear exactly from them what they need and what their goals are. That way, when I report back to the council member, because that's what we do is, we have elected officials, we give them our complaints. That's what we're supposed to do, because we elect people and we want them to work, with us and for us and all that stuff. So we send them a problem that we have, and we expect them to respond to us. But for me, that's not enough, because if you're complaining about the police department or you have a question about us, we need to actually respond to you too. So we've changed that process. It's been a little clunky, and with the transfers over Reno Direct, I think we're much better at it. But we are closing out cases not with a canned response, and we're closing them out in a timely manner now, where we were very far behind before. So you probably did not get a response to a lot of stuff. So I apologize for that, but please know that we are working on that better response.
Time number 3, and my name is Bob Listener, by the way. In Cold Springs, not in the city, we have a community of 2,000 homes. We have a nighttime patrol. Am I still okay? All right. We have a nighttime patrol, and things happen out there. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, people don't want to call the sheriff. They don't want to call the sheriff on their neighbor, bring out some guy with a gun and, can I see your ID? They call our patrol, who has no authority at all, and he goes and talks to the neighbor, and he of course has the sheriff on speed dial just in case. But I think that CSOs and anything else that you send out that is part of the police department, or the police department will listen to, would be very appreciated, and save the really critical stuff for the officers. It's just a waste of everybody's money to have an officer go complain to somebody about their barking dog or their loud party. Somebody in the neighborhood with no authority can do just as well if they're brave enough to do it.
I don't
Thank you.
disagree with you, and I think that we do have to remember that we do have security patrols and things that can handle it, but you also have to, if you're not comfortable doing that, we also have to take the calls from the people that need our assistance, and it does create a certain amount of trust, or we do require a certain amount of trust in communities for them to want to call the police, because you're right, sometimes they don't want somebody with a gun responding to their neighbor who's acting erratically, because they have a fear of how that, situation's gonna resolve itself, and we agree with that, and I don't want to send my officers to mental health calls and mental health challenges where it's not an officer that should be responding, it should be somebody else. We do have mental health clinicians that we can do that. We have a very robust policy, and we're very on top of it. If somebody is suicidal but not a danger to themselves, that we might not go out that night, because they're only a danger to themselves and not anybody else in the surrounding neighborhood, because if they can get away from that space and we're not escalating that situation to a violent encounter if we don't need to, we also do that a lot. So we're really mindful of exactly what you said. Sometimes it's not the police that need to go. So even if you call the police, we might go, hey, I understand you have this problem, but this is who's better to respond to that than the police. Because for years, end all be all, is the police went to everything, regardless if it was a police call or not. And sometimes we're not the best people to talk to certain people in certain situations. There's just better people out there for that. And I will acknowledge that that is the case, and give somebody else that responsibility or duty when we can.
Bill, if you'd like to unmute and ask your question, go ahead.
So I didn't hear the original question behind it, but I infer it had something to do with how's Reno Direct and community service types of officers going from the response, and what are people's feelings on that? Is that about right?
It was really about alternative response and the comfort that people had to have somebody other than a police officer respond, especially to a lower priority type of call.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, then I would I would say ditto to kind of what everybody's been saying, that having um on somebody needs to make a judgment call and like, hey, do we need a uniformed officer with a gun and a badge and a taser showing up for this call, or can we send a mental health professional or somebody else? I think that's a really good, effective use of resources. And but I also think as you do that, I think it's really important to brand them as Reno Police as well. Hey, this is a part of Reno Police, so that that message isn't lost. Um, I, it's important to know that, hey, there's not just the guy with the handcuffs and the gun. There's a guy that's going to show up with a, you know, talk you off the ledge type of situation, whatever it is. I think it's really important, or I think that's a good thing. As far as Reno Direct goes specifically, I use it with pretty good success, and I use it. Everything I report is online. They changed that system, I don't know, in the last year or so, and it's actually been quite good for code enforcement, parking enforcement, graffiti, potholes, that kind of stuff that has been really good. So, but I appreciate the chief's recognition that, you know, there's different calls require different types of people. But again, it's make sure people know, hey, it's part of the Reno Police. Hey, we do a bunch of things. It's important to have that, I think. I think that's where that community policing, that feel will come from. So
Just to underscore what we're doing, the alternative response things that we're looking at are within the Reno Police Department, even if for something like a mental health call, they are in partnership with other entities.
I'll just say one thing. You brought it up a little bit that, notoriously police are bad communicators. It's just the nature of it, no matter how you look at it. Any police department, any police I've ever had contact with, and looking at them as an organization, they're really bad at communicating what we do. Why, I don't know. But it's just kind of the nature of what it becomes a secret. Everything's a secret. It's not a secret. So one of the things we've really worked hard at is really breaking down some of those walls of communication. And some of that's like through Reno Direct. If you call, you should get a response. We should tell you what we did. And if we can't do anything, we should tell you we can't do anything and why. If we can't go to your call for service, we should call you back and explain why we're not going. Because there's generally reasons that most of the community members understand. The other night we had the incident in Sparks, and most of our officers that were working were deployed in that neighborhood. We didn't have a choice. It was a very critical incident. They needed additional resources, and we were handling their calls for service also. So if you called the police that night and several people called council members or called me and said, hey, we didn't get a response, you're right, you didn't. And I'm sorry for that. However, I can't change that. I mean, nobody, I don't think in this room or anywhere really expects us to change that. But if I never tell you that and you didn't see the news that night, you don't understand why not. So we have to communicate better. And it's hard, and it's hard breaking cycles of non-communication, but we're working on it. So please trust that and hope that if you didn't get the response that you wanted for something, please let us know, reach out. Because if I don't know somebody did something wrong, I have no way to fix it. So that's what I always tell people. If you just hide it and you're mad about it and you post it online, I'm probably not gonna be able to help you because I didn't know it happened because I don't always read the comments. So call and let us know though.
And
I
every,
appreciate the recognition of that, and the idea of wanting to improve and be better tomorrow than we are yesterday.
thank you. No, you can ask. No, but that provided some additional feedback that we needed tonight. So thanks. All right. Any other comments, questions? All right. Thank you. This has been a really stellar evening. Thank you. I really appreciate your participation and coming here tonight. That's amazing.